When somebody's been on hold for an hour, they come off that call hot.
If you can do that, we'll probably all chip in for your statue, if you can change the culture of your bureaucracy.
Our average wait time has been 39 minutes.
I am particularly concerned about the effect our failure to enact paid leave has on people of color.
But I do not think Americans should be forced to work until they drop dead.
A couple of things we need to do much better as an agency. There are many things we need to do much better, I should say. I think there's probably nothing that gets quite as many eyeballs on publications on the internet as the screaming headlines that say your Social Security's about to go away.
Kijakazi. I'll let you say that. One of those two things happened, and if I was the administrator, why you say no? Okay, all right, let's go back.
I have relied on Republicans to find me a husband in the past, and they have not done so. And so you just have to do what you have to do.
My goodness, I better not respond to that. First, would like to thank Commissioner O'Malley for joining us today. Thank you for being here today. This is an important time to talk about the future of the Social Security Administration. There are going to be an awful lot of topics that come up today, and one of the things in this that we are going to focus on is the efficiency and the operation of the administration itself. You've got a relatively short runway here. Your term expires in 2025. If you could do one thing that was lasting in the administration past your tenure, what would that be?
Mr. Chairman, if I could do one thing that would last into the future, I pause a little bit here because having served as mayor and served as governor, I've seen many of the things that I thought would last for a long time dissipate as soon as the next fella came in. I think the most important thing that I can do that will have the most lasting impact is to change the culture at Social Security so that we realize that all of those huge numbers that we deal with are real people.
If you can do that, we'll probably all chip in for your statue, if you can change the culture of your bureaucracy.
Not a brick, Mr. Chairman, not a brick.
Different type of question here. You've seen, or the agency's seen a decline from about 87 million calls down to about 81 million calls on an annual basis, and wait times have doubled. Part of the problem, I think we discussed, was implementation of the new phone system. Can you tell us where that process is and how you expect that to improve?
Yes, sir. The short context of this is that shortly before the pandemic, my predecessor decided to launch on a new contract for the phone system that would integrate the 1,210 field offices in each of your districts with the headquarters phones and the 1-800 phone number. Then the pandemic hit, and everything was all about closing down the field offices, standing up an 800 number really quickly, and trying to do everything through that 800 number. We have struggled with the technology, and an 800 number that has not lived up to what we expected of it in terms of the business intelligence to balance the load, to give us management information about who's calling when so that we can have the right staffing to cover it. And we are open to all options to improve that as quickly as possible. I was on the phone with the CEO of Verizon, and we hope to improve that. In the meantime, we do everything we can, and a little bit of good news here. While our average wait time has been 39 minutes for the last several months, over the last few weeks, we got that down to 31 minutes. Nothing to write home about, but it's at least, we're at least getting it headed in a better direction.
Commissioner, can you talk about what you've done so far to address the customer service crisis? You did in your opening remarks, but I wanted to give you a chance to expand on how you would use the $1.3 billion increase that President Biden has proposed.
The 15.4 that the president proposes, this is how we would propose to invest those dollars to improve customer service. Number one, $269 million into the field staff. Our field offices have been open 5 days a week from 9 to 4 p.m. off every day, and that's been true ever since the end of COVID. But they are short-staffed, they are understaffed, and they are overwhelmed. The teleservice centers, we would propose investing $79 million in hiring more of the agents who can be on the other end of that call. Not surprisingly, when somebody's been on hold for an hour, they come off that call hot. And we right now have an attrition rate of about 24% in our teleservice centers. We would invest $85 million in adding staff to the process centers, the processing centers that I'm sure many of you get calls about people saying, hey, I was told my claim was approved, but it's been months, been weeks, I'm still waiting. That's what goes on at the processing centers. $89 million for the ALJ hearings. And the biggest amount of all is really the $2.8 billion for the state disability services.
So, Commissioner, I guess my question is, does the SSA intend to comply with the FRA and the clear requirements there and publish information regarding how the cost of these rules will be offset through other administrative regulatory actions? Or if not, will OMB be issuing a waiver for such requirements? If you could address those three.
Yes, sir. And as I look through, Mr. Chairman, as I was listening and looking through my own list, I do believe that I was the commissioner that approved all three of those.
All right.
It wasn't the last year, it was the last 60 days. And they will be published in due course, and we will, of course, abide by the law of the land in terms of finding offsets or asking for waivers.
As you know, committed Democrats have made paid family and medical leave for all American workers a top priority. I am particularly concerned about the effect our failure to enact paid leave has on people of color and lower paid workers who are far less likely to get paid leave from their employers and often have to quit their jobs if they or someone in their family gets sick. With the President's proposal for universal comprehensive paid leave, provide 12 weeks of leave for lower paid workers and allow them to take leave when they need it instead of leaving the workforce.
Yes, sir. As I understand it, the President's proposal calls upon us to administer that program, and we would, and with the funding that's included in it, we would certainly endeavor to do it. It's not right that we should be one of the most developed economies in the world, and yet one of the very few that does not have paid family leave.
Do I have your assurance that you will implement it as quickly as possible so that more people are not penalized for the SSA's failure to act in a timely manner?
Yes, sir. And Mr. Chairman, would you be talking about that 10-year statute of limitations or administrative finality, whatever the proper parlance is here? Yes, sir, I would. In fact, we're examining that even as we speak as part of the other things that we're doing on overpayments.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Over the past year, the SSA has published multiple proposed rules and taken administrative action independent of Congress that would obligate an estimated $40 billion of new mandatory spending. Under what statutory authority do you believe that you can make these changes, and are there, in your view, any limits to that authority?
Well, Mr. Chairman, certainly there's limits within the law, and just a little while ago we were talking about some of those things. It's interesting, I meet on a regular every month basis with claimants' representatives as well as advocates, and especially among the claimants' representatives, I mean, there are people from all over the country, Democrats, Republicans alike, and they've been waiting a long time for a confirmed commissioner that would put forward many of these regulations.
I do not know about you, but I do not think Americans should be forced to work until they drop dead. Can you give us your thoughts on the dangerous proposal?
Well, Mr. Chairman, the beautiful thing about this program is that 80% of Americans support it regardless of party, and they want their government to strengthen it and expand it, not to cut it, contract it, or gut its customer service. I think that's a phenomenal consensus in a time of polarized politics that 80% of the American people want us to expand it. To those who, for those who would advocate, raising the age, I think we have to be mindful of people that really do hard work, hard labor, their whole lives, and who die sooner than those of us that are privileged enough to be able to, do work that is not as taxing on our bodies and our physical well-being.
How much time, on average, does it take for SSA to determine an overpayment has occurred after a person has actually received the funds? And is there any limit on how long SSA has to establish the debt after the actual overpayment has occurred?
Let me answer. Let me break down. Those are two questions. With
Right.
regard. Let me back up a second. Beginning February 5th, we began a process of looking for 1 hour every 2 weeks at what we can do to untangle this Gordian knot of the overpayments. That review actually, fortunately for my service, began in October, right around the same time as that 60 Minutes expose that showed those stories of those Americans who, through no fault of their own, had 100% of their benefits intercepted and caused them a horrible financial calamity. So there are several things that we have already done, and there are more things that we are doing. One of the things we've done is we've ended, as of March 25th, the process of intercepting 100% of benefits if the person doesn't, respond to the notice. Second, we're going to shift the burden away from asking the claimant to prove they weren't at fault. That should be on the agency. Third, we are going to allow repayment plans instead of just within the next 36 months, instead 60 months to alleviate the burden. And finally, we're going to make it easier for overpaid beneficiaries to request a waiver of repayment.
Would you consider, there's a program called Ticket to Work.
Yes, sir.
It was always meant to be somewhat optimistic. And is there a chance of moving whoever leads that into sort of your management cabinet so it gets more focus, more attention, and maybe more use?
Yes, sir, perhaps. I'm on a steep learning curve. And one of the things that I've learned, though, is that when it comes to Ticket to Work, it is a well-intended program, but it is a program that we have not promoted.
That's almost exactly the point, is how do we make it meet its mission? Because it is something that had both left and right support. So.
Yeah, it's two things. It's not only promoting the program, it's not only educating our frontline staff about it. There's probably some changes necessary so the ENs, the employment networks, are able to submit on behalf of third parties. I mean, as a third party, those payment verifications. But it also, as I understand it so far, I could be wrong, sometimes in big bureaucracies, people tell you one thing, and when you ask 5 more whys, you find out another.
Why does that sound so familiar? But look, you have our interest. So
it requires, I think, some more staffing as in addition to just, printing up more flyers and pushing out more notice.
So can you talk about what SSA is doing to ensure that foster youth can smoothly and reliably secure their Social Security cards? Are there ways that Congress can help you improve this process?
There's a couple of things we need to do much better as an agency. There are many things we need to do much better, I should say, and we're discovering some of those. Training really took a hit during COVID, and we haven't recovered from it since. So we do find disparate, different applications of our rules depending on what region you're in, and even from one field office to another. So we have to improve on our training. Secondly, we have been slow in our aversion to risk and our duty to safeguard the program. We have been slow to embrace some technologies that Americans take for granted everywhere, like electronic signatures or state records that are e-certified. There are many things we need to do to ease the traditional requirements of paper documents in order to make sure that people, in this case foster kids, have what they need from the agency so that they can be successful in moving forward.
How can we tell and advise government and people that, hey, this is real? I mean, this isn't something that's made up. I mean, I worry about this immensely, and I think you and Congress have to do our part to change this dynamic, and I just want your thoughts on that.
Yes, sir, thank you. And I think there's probably nothing that gets quite as many eyeballs on publications on the internet as the screaming headlines that say your Social Security's about to go away in a few years, especially given the fact that for 50% of seniors, that's the difference between poverty and living in dignity. The good news is, the governance to choose. And I believe that we have the ability to extend solvency for the foreseeable future, just like Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan and Howard Baker did back in 1982. People remember that nostalgically, as if Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan had a beer and decided to fix it, but it was only up on the deadline. I don't think we should. I don't think we should wait until the deadline. I've had a lot of great conversations with people of both sides of the aisle, including Senator Cassidy on the other side of the Hill, and Mike Rounds. And the truth is, it's only when enough Democrats and Republicans come together for these tough things.
And I agree with that. And I know it's Congress's idea, or Congress that has to do this, but I also need you as Social Security trustees to advocate for, hey, and create proposals.
Commissioner, I'd like to follow up on the last time the former acting commissioner, and I probably won't pronounce this right,
Kijakazi.
I'll let you say that, spoke before us, which was on October 18th, 2023. I'd also ask unanimous consent to submit her testimony for the record from that hearing. Commissioners, you may know the acting administrator provided incomplete, unverified, and misleading data to this committee related to overpayments at that hearing. We were especially concerned that SSA failed to disclose this mistake for weeks after it was first identified and only disclosed it to the committee after being forced to do so pursuant to a FOIA request. This is unacceptable, and it makes me wonder what else is going on at the agency considering the continuous mistakes and the lack of transparency. Are you aware of that interaction?
Yes, sir, I am.
Is she still with the agency?
Yes, she is. She is and serving in a senior advisor position, and she's performing many of the duties of. We don't have an acting deputy, so she's performing many of those duties.
So, has there been any investigation by you as to why she lied to this body and misrepresented the numbers? Is there going to be an investigation as to why it was misrepresented to us what the numbers were?
Congressman, I don't blame you at all for being skeptical, and asking tough questions. But I can tell you from my 90 days of trying to untangle and get to the bottom accurately of the overpayment causes, the numbers of people separate from the numbers of debts, because some people have more than one debt. Sometimes people have a debt, and then they have a second overpayment.
Well, somebody had to have either provided her with those numbers that she then misled Congress of, or she knew what the real numbers were and misled the committee because she didn't want to represent the totality of the failures of the administration. So one of those two things happened, and if I was the administrator, why you say no? Okay, all right, let's go back. Do you agree that she misrepresented the amount to this committee?
Yes, but I don't believe it was intentional.
Okay, so if it wasn't intentional, was it somebody that provided her the wrong information?
Well, and I'm sure when they gave it to her, they didn't think it was wrong either. Congressman, I can assure you in 90 days of looking at this, nobody 5 months ago really had a grasp of what the cause and the effects and the results of the overpayments were. We have a much better grasp of that now, and I would be glad to provide that to you, and we have much more accurate numbers now.
Okay, well, in my exchange with her, she basically said that they're accountable because, and I've already entered the transcript for the record, they're accountable because they hold themselves accountable, which doesn't make any sense. So can you give me a different or more coherent answer about how there will be accountability for mistakes at the Social Security Administration when the mistakes are being made by the people who work there and is affecting taxpayers?
Yes, sir. The agency, and I'm new to the agency, I didn't come up in the culture of the agency, but they have a mantra that their mission is to get the right amount to the right person at the right time. And by and large, we do so. Yeah, I was surprised to find when we actually looked at the actual number of overpayments and the trend over time, there's not more overpayments than there have been over the last 5 years. But because of the decline in staffing to 27-year lows, and it kept taking us longer to catch up with those overpayments, the amount of the overpayments is higher now than it was pre-COVID times. So when we make a mistake, though, this is it might only look on paper like it's 0.5% or 2%, but that's a lot of Americans.
So my question was, are you doing anything to ensure that this isn't happening again? Like, is there going to be consequences for people who work in your agencies who make mistakes?
Yeah, well, certainly. And if they do it intentionally, pretty dire consequences. A number of the committee staff have come to our security staff, and Congressman, I would invite you to come and see how we are improving the accuracy of our data and the sharing of that data every day. And on
All right, I want to shift because I only got 30 seconds left. On page 5 of her testimony, this is the last time she was before this committee, she stated, and I quote, "We intend to publish a proposed rule changing our overpayment recovery waiver rules to streamline processes and reduce burden so eligible individuals can more easily seek debt relief. Our goal is to ensure that overpayment recovery does not unduly burden those in underserved, vulnerable or marginalized communities." And I asked her specifically about communities of color, which is what she was referring to. Commissioner, do you believe that your agency should consider race as a factor in determining benefits?
No, I do not, although I do believe we should always be mindful of the disparate impact of our policies and also of our congressional mandate to make sure that this program, that people have equal access to this program regardless of race,
So you can assure this committee today that someone's race, religion, gender will not be a factor in the overpayment recovery rule that the former acting commissioner referenced in her testimony?
Yes, I can assure you of that. And at the same time, we will be very mindful of not to put up any barriers for anybody to be able to access overpayments. I mean, or rather the remedy of overpayments not of their making.
My time's expired.
And should the Social Security Administration not focus on properly implementing and administering the existing programs before proposing to undertake such a massive new program as paid family leave?
Well, certainly, Congressman, we need to get back to the 1.2% overhead that we traditionally have been able to use to provide the customer service we need to. Having said that, we could also administer paid family leave provided, as the President has provided in his budget, there's the staffing that goes with us. But you're right. If we go down to
Staffing from where?
What, the funding for it?
Well, the funding might be there, but that does not actually fulfill the staffing needs that exist.
Well, we would have to hire up staff in order to do it.
And where do you believe those employees would be found?
Well, there are people who want to work at our agency who we can't hire because of a hiring freeze and a lack of money. There are people, I think we need to change our strategy as an agency. I think we target too much on college graduates and not enough on high school and community college graduates. And with proper training, that could really be an investment that holds for a long time. You know, we used to have a program at SSA called, what was it, something about students, stay-in-school kids. And I met people in Kansas City and town halls, employee town halls across the country. They've now been with the agency 40 years, but they're like, I was a stay-in-school kid when they hired me 40 years ago out of high school. So we could hire them if there's the money for it.
So it's your assessment, though, that you have a surplus of applicants right now?
Yes, sir. I believe we have no shortage of applicants. As I said at the outset, I'm really grateful to the chairman and this committee for even holding a hearing on Social Security's budget because we haven't had a budget hearing here in 9 long years. I mean, I know it's Ways and Means, I understand the nuances, but the fact remains that by not having a budget and not focusing on this, essentially, we've seen 9 years of decline so that we're now operating on less than 1%. In fact, it's 0.94.
So you can't get blood out of a turnip, can't expect you to perform. So I'm going to ask you some more questions. Thank you. You have an enterprise scheduling system, the ESS, and also My Social Security Portal web-based services. I am the co-chair of the Congressional Foster Youth Caucus, bipartisan. And, one of the things that we have learned from foster youth is that sometimes they have a hard time accessing services to which they may be entitled. So is this enterprise scheduling systems available to them as minors or only to their caretakers or payees?
That's a great question, and I do not know the answer, but I can check it out and get back to you, Congresswoman.
Yeah,
Yes,
I have some born-again Christians who are on SSI, and they feel guilty because they can't get married. They don't think they don't want to shack up and live together, and they say that as SSI recipients, they can't get married. What is that a bias that has some basis in your belief about fraud, or this is a group of people who feel persecuted?
Yes, ma'am. As I understand it so far, and I'm learning every day, this very, very complex program to administer has an inherent sort of marriage bias in it because there is, they have to calculate, if two people are in the same household, it can reduce the amount that they qualify for because the assumption is that they're both, sharing some expenses in that household. It has the effect that you just outlined of discouraging people from being married.
Well, maybe we can revisit it when I have more time, Mr. Chairman.
I just wasn't sure where you were going to go with the shacking up comment. I'm just glad you didn't ask him
Well,
to give the advice of a
all I can
priest on
say
that.
is that I have relied on Republicans to find me a husband in the past, and they have not done so. And so you just have to do what you have to do.
My goodness, I better not respond to that.
I yield back.
With that, the subcommittee is adjourned.